Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for our February 22nd lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students, Lesson 53. Today we'll review the following. My meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear. God did not create a meaningless world. My thoughts are images which I have made. And those are lessons 11 through 15 that we're reviewing. And you don't have to go back and reread those lessons unless you want to. I mean, you certainly can, but it's not required. All right? So let's go ahead and read our lesson. My meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. I can almost see good enough without my glasses on out here outside, but it helps a little bit. My meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. Since the thoughts of which I am aware do not mean anything, the world which pictures them can have no meaning. What is producing this world is insane, and so is what it produces. Reality is not insane, and I have real thoughts as well as insane ones. I can therefore see a real world if I look to my real thoughts as my guide for seeing. So that's what we want to try to find, is our real thoughts instead of our insane thoughts. Or the next one. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. Insane thoughts are upsetting. They produce a world in which there is no order anywhere. That's why it's insanity. Only chaos rules a world which represents chaotic thinking, and chaos has no laws. I cannot live in peace in such a world. I am grateful that this world is not real, and that I need not see it at all unless I choose to value it. And I do not choose to value what is totally insane and has no meaning. A meaningless world engenders fear. The totally insane engenders fear because it is completely undependable and offers no ground for trust. Offers no grounds for trust. I am in madness. Nothing in madness is dependable. It holds out no safety and no hope. But such a world is not real. I have given it the illusion of reality and have suffered from my belief in it. Now I choose to withdraw this belief and place my trust in reality. In choosing this, I will escape all the effects of the world of fear because I am acknowledging that it does not exist. Wow. Lesson 14, our fourth review for today. God did not create a meaningless world. How can a meaningless world exist if God did not create it? He is the source of all meaning, and everything that is real is in His mind. It is in my mind too, because He created it with me. Why should I continue to suffer from the effects of my own insane thoughts when the perfection of creation is my home? Let me remember the power of my decision and recognize where I really abide. God did not create a meaningless world. And the last review for Lesson 15. My thoughts are images which I have made. Whatever I see reflects my thoughts. It is my thoughts which tell me where I am and what I am. The fact that I see a world in which there is suffering and loss and death shows me that I am seeing only the representation of my insane thoughts and am not allowing my real thoughts to cast their beneficent light on what I see. Let's read that sentence again. The fact that I see a world in which there is suffering and loss and death shows me that I am seeing only the representation of my insane thoughts and am not allowing my real thoughts to cast their beneficent light on what I see. Yet God's way is sure. The images I have made cannot prevail against him, because it is not my will that they do so. My will is his, and I will place no other gods before him. Wow, can we make that commitment not to place any other gods? The gods that are the gods of sickness, loss, death, pain, anger, all those negatives. We want to see the God of love, the God of peace, and value our perception, our awareness of God, of him, of reality. All right? Okay, so my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear. God did not create a meaningless world. My thoughts are images which I have made. Okay, now let's go take a look in our reading in chapter 13 from perception to knowledge. We're in section 5, the guarantee of heaven. And we're ready for paragraph 42. And I think we'll start with paragraph 41. Anyway, I've been out here cutting with my chainsaw some big tall posts for my center posts of a octagon, I don't know what to call it, cabin, temple, building. Anyway, I needed some pretty long ones, and so I thought maybe, what I'd do is, as I build this thing, let you all see a little bit as I go. That way you'll learn how to build one of these hand-sculpted cabins, and we'll learn more about it as we go along. But anyway, as you can see, I think you can see, yeah, there you go. And there's a log right there behind me that I just cut. And behind me you'll see two trees that are growing pretty close together. And I'll take one of those, and that'll release the other one to grow and get more light. And so, doing selective harvesting, where you actually are making your woodlands a better place by trimming, rather than just cutting everything or taking the best and leaving the worst. We don't want to do that. We want to take the poorer ones, if at all possible, so that the genetics of your wood slowly gets better, because the mother trees that are left are your nice, straight, tall trees. And these are all post oaks, Quercus stellatus, which work really nice for posts in the Ozarks, all right? Which is what I'll be using them for. All right, now also but while you're turning there, I also want to tell you about two zucchinis that I want to grow. They're both, I said zucchini, squashes. They're both zucchini squashes, but different varieties. One I'm going to read to you about out of the Baker's Creek catalog, and it's the Ford Hook zucchini. There's also a Ford Hook Swiss chard. So, but this is the Ford Hook zucchini. Says it's a 57-day classic cylindrical dark green straight to slightly curved zucchinis. Tender creamy white flesh freezes well. Vigorous and productive bush plants. I think of them as vines, but they're calling them bush plants. They're more bushy, I guess, than viney. Originally developed at Ford Hook Farms, this summer squash was an AAS winner in 1942. So wherever the Ford Hook Farms is at. And then the other zucchini that I usually have grown is the one called the Black Beauty zucchini. Both of these are heirlooms. And expect a bountiful harvest from these compact, overbearing bush plants, loaded with glossy green black fruits with firm and slightly white flesh. Best eaten when under 8 inches long. And of course they'll get much, much longer. I used to grow them up to maybe a couple feet long. I ricked up a whole rick of, looked like firewood, but it was zucchinis out of a field one year. I couldn't sell them as fast as I could grow them. And they actually tasted good, but I'm not sure what variety they were. They were probably one of these common varieties though. best eaten when under 8 inches long, excellent variety for freezing, a 1957 All-American Selections winner developed by John Skarchuk at the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, and it's a 45 to 65 day squash. All right, now let's go take a look at our reading in our text. Like I said, starting in paragraph 41. We read this yesterday, but we'll get a running start at it, and it had so much good stuff in it. Have faith in only this one thing, and it will be sufficient. Okay, so what's he going to tell us to have faith in? One thing, and it'll be sufficient. God wills you be in heaven, and nothing can keep you from it or it from you. Okay, can we just keep that in mind? That God wills us to be in heaven, and nothing's going to keep us out of it, and nothing's going to keep heaven from us. It's all on our own choice of when we want to enter. And remember, it's in our midst. The kingdom of heaven is now. There's no need to die to get there. So let's read that again. Have faith in only this one thing, and it will be sufficient. God wills you be in heaven, and nothing can keep you from it and it from you. Your wildest misperceptions, your weird imaginings, your blackest nightmares all mean nothing. They will not prevail against the peace God wills for you. The Holy Spirit will restore your sanity, because insanity is not the will of God. If that suffices Him, it is enough for you to not be insane. You will not keep what God would have removed. You will not keep what God would have removed, because it breaks communication with you with whom He would communicate. His voice will be heard. 42. The communication link which God Himself placed within you, joining your minds with His, cannot be broken. You may believe you want it broken, and this belief does interfere with the deep peace in which the sweet and constant communication which God would share with you is known. Yet His channels of reaching out cannot be wholly closed and separated from Him. Peace will be yours, because His peace still flows to you from Him whose will is peace. You have it now. The Holy Spirit will teach you how to use it, and by projecting it, to learn that it is in you. You remember, to have, give all to all. So we want to learn to give the peace that we want, and and by giving it, we realize it's within us. We're like the fountain that never goes dry. 43. God willed you heaven, and will always will you nothing else. Wow. Keep that beautiful, beautiful thought, particularly for the ones of us that have come from ideas that were contrary to that. This should bring us great joy. It makes life a lot easier. You can smile a lot more. God willed you heaven, and will always will you nothing else. The Holy Spirit knows only of His will. There is no chance that heaven will not be yours, for God is sure, and what He wills as sure as He is. You will learn salvation because you will learn how to save. It will not be possible to exempt yourself from what the Holy Spirit wills to teach you. Salvation is as sure as God. Salvation is as sure as God. That's that concept that I came up with, which actually was a friend of mine, Tyrone Harmon, who has crossed over now, but he's the one that first told me this idea of ultimate reconciliation. And he hadn't learned it through the course, but the idea made sense to me, and in my kind of beginning to awaken mentality, I started trying to apply that, and it took so much of the harshness out of my soul winning. You will learn salvation because you will learn how to save. Isn't that beautiful? God willed you heaven and will always will you nothing else. The Holy Spirit knows only of His will. There is no chance that heaven will not be yours, for God is sure, and He wills as sure as He is. You will learn salvation because you will learn how to save. It will not be possible to exempt yourself from what the Holy Spirit wills to teach you. Salvation is as sure as God. His certainty suffices. Learn that even the darkest nightmare that disturbed the mind of God's sleeping Son holds no power over him. He will learn the lesson of awakening. God watches over him, and light surrounds him. Can God's Son lose himself in dreams when God has placed within him the glad call to waken and be glad? Can God's Son lose himself in dreams when God has placed within him the glad call to waken and be glad? He cannot separate himself from what is in him. His sleep will not withstand the call to wake. The mission of redemption will be fulfilled as surely as the creation will remain unchanged throughout eternity. You do not have to know that heaven is yours to make it so. You do not have to know that heaven is yours to make it so. It is so. Yet the will of God must be accepted as your will to know it. Let's read that again. You do not have to know that heaven is yours to make it so. It is so. Yet the will of God must be accepted as your will to know it. 45. The Holy Spirit cannot fail to undo for you everything you have learned that teaches you that it is not true. The Holy Spirit cannot fail to undo for you everything you have learned that teaches you what is not true must be reconciled with truth. This is the reconciliation which the ego would substitute for your reconciliation unto sanity and unto peace. The Holy Spirit has a very different kind of reconciliation in His mind for you, and one which He will effect as surely as the ego will not effect what it attempts. 46. I think this is the last paragraph we're going to read today. Failure is of the ego, not of God. Failure is of the ego, not of God. From Him you cannot wander. Failure is of the ego, not of God. From Him you cannot wander. And there is no possibility that the plan the Holy Spirit offers to everyone for the salvation of everyone will not be perfectly accomplished. You will be released, and you will not remember anything you made that was not created for you and by you in return. For how can you remember what was never true and not remember what has always been? It is this reconciliation with truth, and only truth, in which the peace of heaven lies. So, just remember that you can't keep heaven from you. You are going to be reconciled, even in your awareness. And you can speed that up by doing these lessons. We have a way. Listening to the Holy Spirit as your guide, and resign as your own teacher. Don't use the ego as your teacher any longer. All right, so until tomorrow, be sure to do your at least 7 2-minute practice periods. Look at each one individually, each paragraph and thought for 2 minutes each day, and then be sure to look at all of them morning and again in the evening. And I like to just read through them and then spend 2 minutes meditating. All right? So my meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear. But God did not create a meaningless world. My thoughts are images which I have made. My thoughts are images which I have made. All right, so until tomorrow, thank you for joining me. Practice that lesson. Thank you.